review. I will be your trainer today. My name is Susan Hayes. Shar is going to be your moderator. She will be answering your questions in Q&A. So if you have questions along the way, put them into the Q&A. We will also answer questions at the end. I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your busy day to attend this session, and hopefully I'll answer all your questions. So just to remind you, we have the year-end center out in the community hub, and it has lots of resources on it, checklists for the year, the IRS website, videos for year-end training down in the bottom, frequently asked questions, and your software update. What we're going to cover today is how to verify and or close your 1099 and AP year, how to check the 1099 information. If you need to correct the 1099 totals for any reason, I will show you 2 ways to do that. We have articles for installing the Atrix updates. We'll do a walkthrough of the 1099 process. I'll give you all the Atrix filing deadlines, and then once again, we'll cover the resources for year end. By the way, just to make sure everybody knows that you need to be on version 24.3 to be able to do W-2s, payroll forms, and 1099s. So I'm starting with reviewing your year-end date and your 1099 year-end date. You can see it in AP settings up in the top left-hand corner. And I usually make sure that my 1099 year is the year I am processing 1099s. It makes it a lot easier. When you're done with processing your 1099s, you can go ahead and close the 1099 year. If you need to close the year, or when you're done with your 1099s, you're going to go to Tasks, Close 1099 Year, confirm what your current year is and what your new year ending date is going to be. On my data, I didn't close the year because I was already in 2024. To verify your 1099 totals, we have the 1099 preparation report. You can access that under Reports, Miscellaneous, 1099 Preparation. You have 2 options for running the report depending on how you need to print your 1099s. If you only have one taxpayer ID, it's going to be by vendor. If you have multiple in the same data folder, it's going to be by fiscal entity. Here is what the print selection screen looks like. I'm leaving mine on current year because it's 2024. You need to fill in the minimum reporting amount. I believe it's 600, but you have that resource on your community hub for the IRS website that can confirm that information. You have 3 options on what information to print on this report. Either the vendors that you have checked to receive Form 1099, vendors that you do not have marked to receive Form 1099, or all vendors in the same report. If you have made vendors inactive during the year that have been paid for 2024, you'll want to check the box for Include Inactive Vendors. Here's an example of what the report looks like. It's showing my 2024 year. I put in the $600 minimum. It shows the form type and the vendors and their dollar amounts and whether they receive a Form 1099. Since all of these say yes, it's telling me there's going to be 7 forms created for a total of the $55,000 number. One way you can correct your 1099 totals is to use the Recalculate 1099 Totals tool under Tools. An example of when you might need to do this is if you forgot to close your 1099 year. So you're back in 2022, and that's more than 1 year ago. So your totals would be wrong. The process, this is the screen that you'll use on the right-hand side here. You'll click the Start button, and this box will come up saying what it's going to do. So it's going to zero out all the vendor and prefix totals in the software, and then it will go out to the distribution payment records and total up all the payments, not including taxes paid, discounts taken, payments by credit card, which you have to be using credit card management for that, any miscellaneous deductions you use, and any distributions marked exempt. Two examples of why you might have a distribution marked exempt. One is if you're doing an employee reimbursement. Another is if you've done a vendor refund. Here is if you're correcting the vendor totals, you're going to pull up the vendor and the 1099 settings tab. And down here in the bottom, you're going to change the 1099 total. Now you will have to have audit setup activity turned on for this, and you will have to be an application administrator. If you need to change the prefix totals, you can find that under Tools, Maintain Prefix Totals, and you're going to change your total down here in the bottom. Now you will need to hit the Enter key to get all the way into those fields to be able to change them. And you'll also need to have audit setup activity turned on to be able to do that. All right, once you've gotten your totals all corrected, you can go ahead and start processing your 1099s. So you go to Task, Government E-Filing and Reporting, and Form 1099 UA. If you have not already processed payroll or have not gone into Atrix for a while, you will have to do the forms update. You're going to say yes to the would you like to update now, and a box will come up and you're going to pick the automatic update. Now this process will take a little while, and a box will come up down, the one you're seeing down on the bottom left, with the forms it's going to update. When the next button turns black, you'll be able to click on it. That means the forms are updated, and then you click Close. Here are some knowledge base articles. I'll give you just a minute if you want to copy the screen about how to update the forms and if you have any issues. Those are the common articles for this. Now do remember, e-filing is required for companies that have 10 or more forms to file. That includes W-2s and 1099s. Okay, here's the knowledge base article for detailed directions on how to print and generate the forms. And we're going to start here with the first screen. So once again, like on your 1099 prep report, you have the option to print by vendor or by fiscal entity. If you print by fiscal entity, the GL prefix drop-down will become active, and it will allow you to pick the prefix that you need to print the 1099s for. Your 1099 form options are here. You just hit the drop down and pick the form you want to do and put in your reporting year. Once again, you're going to put in your minimum reporting amount and then finally your federal ID number. Click the next button and your vendor list is going to show up. These are all the vendors that have received Form 1099 checked on the vendor setup. You cannot add vendors at this point. Here you can see on the vendor setup on the 1099 settings tab up in the top left-hand corner, vendor receives Form 1099. We also have a new feature in the software on 24.3 for an alternate address for 1099s. Once you check the box, there's a button that shows up at the bottom of the screen so you can enter your 1099 alternate address. And when you click on the button, another box will pop up. Fill in the information and click OK. This information will not print on the 1099 prep report. It is going into next year's version, but it does print the alternate address for the 1099. Once you look at your list that we had, the next screen is going to be this generate box that gives you some information. Now notice it says to order tax forms. This year, all the forms print on blank paper except the recipient's 1099 form that prints on blank 4-part perforated paper. You get an option to either do a test drive with 25 or all of your recipients or start processing right away. For those of you that are new to the process, I do recommend doing the test drive so you can get used to the process. It's going to confirm your taxpayer ID number again. Then you click Next. Here, if you have the same taxpayer ID number in multiple data folders or company folders, you have the opportunity to merge. Over here, I put in the knowledge base article, how to merge those forms, to give you more information. They're asking who's preparing the taxes. Most people will be filing for their company employer. This is a new screen this year, Transfer Agent. Transfer Agent, you can read what's down here. It is somebody outside of the company that handles the details there at the bottom. Most people will not be using a transfer agent. Now you may have state tax items that you need to file. You'll get the opportunity here. You should know if you need to file it. You will need to know the state, the tax name, and have a tax account number. And if you need that information, that would be through your tax accountant or your state. Same goes for special state or local tax items. You will need to get the missing information here from your tax accountant. If any recipients want to receive their 1099 forms electronically, you can pick that option. And here, how do you want your taxpayer ID numbers printing on your 1099s? One thing to note through the process, you may see employee or payroll while you're in the 1099 processing, it is still 1099s even though it says employee. Here is a review of the steps that it gives you. And finally, we get into the 1099 information for each of your recipients and the check. When you click the next button, it will go through each item that's going to print on the 1099, tell you if there are any errors or if anything you need to fix. When you're done with that review, you get one more chance to double check. And then we get to your 1099 filing options. So you have two options. The first one is to have Atrix do everything for you. They'll mail out your recipient copies. They'll e-file any recipient copies. They'll file your federal 1099s, 1096, all the state forms and reconciliation forms for a price. That price will show up here. You can also choose to print and mail out your own, but remember, if you have 10 or more forms, overall, between payroll and AP and all of your data folders, that you will have to e-file. And your price is down here. If you have states to file, it will give you this screen and you can select all or select none. When you go into the forms, which is the next step, the first form that's going to print out is your recipient 1099 copy. That is what you'll mail out to your vendors. And you'll print on the 4-part perforated form. The second one is your copy of the 1099. So there's 4 vendors per page. And for instance, on mine, there's 2 pages you can see up on the top. On all of these forms, when you print final, it will tell you what to put in the printer. So remember, once again, just the recipient 1099s is 4-part perforated. Everything else is on blank paper now. So after your copy of the 1099s is the federal copy of the 1099s. Then we'll go to the 1096, the 1096 state forms, if you have any, and then finally the Atrix login. So if you have questions from this point on, you can go to this website because this is Atrix's program. Remember once again that we have the community hub where the year-end center is located. Here are your year-end filing deadlines. So we've covered how to verify and or close the 1099 in the AP year, how to verify your 1099 information using the 1099 prep report, the 2 ways to correct your 1099 totals, either through recalculate 1099s or manually updating specific vendors. There were the articles for the Atrix install and form updates and issues. We did a walkthrough of the 1099 process. We reviewed the filing deadlines and your resources for year end. Okay, now it's time for questions. Do you have questions there, Shar?
I just have a couple, so if anybody wants to add them to the Q&A room, now is your chance. Our first question is regarding, well, actually, both of our questions are around closing the year in AP.
Okay.
So, one of the questions was, we are in year 2023. What is the difference between close year versus close 1099 year? And do we need to close both at the same time? Does it matter which one you close first?
Okay, so closing the AP year, what it controls is on your vendor setup is the current balances and the totals. So the totals here are what show up when you go into any of your inquiries where it starts with the vendor information. So these amounts here are what is showing on this totals tab for this year. Now, when you close your 2023 year, so if this year is 2023, next year is 2024 and everything beyond that. So if you start entering invoices or cutting checks for 2025, it's going to be combined in this next year bucket. So when you close the year, your this year total will be wrong because it will include 2024 and 2025. So you definitely need to make sure before you start processing 2025 to close the year. Any questions on that?
We actually do have some things to add to that.
Okay.
So here's one of the questions, which is, we are currently on 22.3. Oh, no, that's not it. Sorry. Can you explain why my 2024 1099 totals would be wrong? I think you just kind of covered that. Oh, I do want to say a copy of this webinar. Yes, we are going to give you guys a copy of the webinar. So that question's it's being recorded. The community hub will have an announcement with this for the copy. So go ahead with the closing of the year.
Okay. Do we have another question or more clarification on
It
that?
says, can you explain why my 2024 1099 totals would be wrong if my 1099 year is still at 2022 right now?
Okay, so if you were in 2022, once again, the reason why it would be wrong is when you close 2022, it's going to move what's in next year to this year and this year to last year. So if you're in 2022, everything for 2023 and beyond is combined in that bucket. That is a good example of when you would run recalculate 1099 totals.
Perfect.
And
is the 1096 also on blank paper this time?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Is there just one form update for AP and payroll? I think they mean an Atrix for that.
So
and the answer to that is yeah.
Well, the Atrix update, you may have to run the Atrix update if there's any payroll changes that happen. So the first time you go into government e-file and reporting, it will prompt you to update. Mine isn't going to because I already updated mine, but you'll be able to go in without updating as long as Atrix hasn't had any more updates to forms.
Here's a question. We have to order the perforated forms for the 1099. Do all fit the same? Where should we order them from, maybe?
Well, you can get them from Sage Forms. It's the 4-up. So when you are, let me go back here. So the perforation would go in between these 4 forms. So Sage Forms has them. I believe we had a screenshot of that. Did we? Sorry, just a minute. Oh, can you find a knowledge base article for that, Shar?
For which one?
For the forms, where they can get forms from? I think it's
Yeah.
Sage Forms. Thank you. And I also wanted to show you how to get to the community, the year-end location. When you're on your Sage Construction and Real Estate, this first tab is your community hub. Over here on the right-hand side, you'll see year-end centers. If you go here to Sage 300 Construction and Real Estate Year-End Center, this is where all the information is for year-end, including the software updates and your IRS website to confirm anything you need.
Perfect. And so let me get back because I was trying to find that form over here. So we have so one of the questions is, will you be able to show the deadline page again? I am going to be posting that. So you will have a link out to the knowledge base article for that, for the person who asked that question. And when should AP close year be done versus closing the 1099 year?
The big criteria is do not get more than 1 year behind. You can close it at the time you verify your 1099 totals. I mean, your 1099 fiscal year end date, or you can close it at the same time you close the 1099 year. It's up to you. Just don't forget to do it if you use those vendor totals.
So we have somebody who's a little confused on the closing of the AP year.
Okay.
So it says, are you stating that if you don't close AP year before you begin putting in AP invoices for 2025, then our totals would be wrong? So maybe go over that again.
Sure, I will do that. So I'm going up here. I'm just going to start here on our AP settings. So right now my 2024 is the current year. So when I go look at the vendor setup, on the totals tab, this is the information that is going to show on your inquiries. So this would be the 2024 totals. So if you use these and you want it to be current, you would want to close the 2024 year as soon as you start processing for 2025. Just a note, if you forget, what's going to happen is 2025 is going to fill into the next year bucket. And when you do close the year, it will move to this year and show up on those vendor totals.
If your AP close is a couple of years behind 2022, should you run multiple year ends at year end to get the system caught up?
Okay, that's a very good question that I forgot to cover. if you get behind on your AP year, there is not a way in the software for it to recalculate those totals. You would have to manually run reports to find out your open amounts, your discounts, your year-to-date purchases, year-to-date paid, and manually update the vendor record. You would have to go in here and type in the correct numbers. So that's a really good question. So if you use those totals, you do want to make sure you close your AP year.
Perfect. So can you show how to get out to where the download center is with the 24.3? I'm a year behind. 24.3 download is.
So do I know how to get out there? Okay, yeah. So right here on the year-end center page, if you look under updates, there's software updates. When you click on that, it brings you to the download center. And you can just click here on the
First, they
300
have to log
CRE.
in, I think, don't they?
Well, do they have to log in or is it automatic when they have? You may have to log in.
I don't know.
Anybody have an idea there? But the link is there. If it makes you log in, you'll have to log in.
I'll check.
And you can put in 24.3. Why is it up? Well, that's interesting. You do have to log in. And I'm not logged in. So I apologize. Once you log in, you should be able to get that. But it is here through software updates. And if you follow through, you'll be able to get that download.
Okay. Can we wait until March of 2025 to do the download if we're not doing any 1099s until March?
I believe the deadline for 1099s is before March, but if you do not, yeah, that, let's see if they have forms and instructions. I have not been out here yet.
1099 NEC is January 31st is the federal deadline for the 1099 NEC.
So because 24.3 is the only year-end supported version for W-2s and 1099s, I would say you would need to upgrade before March if you're going to meet the deadline.
Give me a second here. I'm trying to get into the. We're getting some questions published here. Give me just a second. Go ahead and show the deadline page again. We got that question again.
All right.
So this is the Atrix deadlines, not the federal deadlines, but when they're due in Atrix, correct?
Correct. And remember, if you have 10 or more forms, you have to e-file. And that's total for your company, not by taxpayer ID number or W-2 versus 1099.
If I don't go from version 22.3 to 24.3 before doing my year-end processing, what will happen?
Oh boy. Well, it's not a supported version, so I'm not sure if your Atrix forms will be updated properly, if they will, or if they will even be correct. We only are supporting the 24.3 version for year-end processing.
What is the impact if we don't upgrade until March?
Well, as I said, your forms may or may not be correct. 24.3 is required for your year-end processing. There are updates in the software that make the Atrix work.
What if you need paper and electronic 1099s?
Oh, well, in the process that we went through, you get to get your own copies of the 1099s. So these steps back here, regardless of whether you e-file or not, all of these forms get printed out. The difference is when I believe there's a watermark if you're e-filing on the federal copies that says record copy, do not file.
Can you distinguish between closing the year and year-end forms processing a little bit more?
Okay. So the year-end processing for 1099s is what's in here. So your close 1099 year updates these three totals at the bottom. Your close AP year affects the totals on this tab and is seen, it can be put into reports, but it is seen on your inquiries. Oops, and I lost my inquiry screen. So the 1099 totals are solely for printing your 1099s. You can report on them if you want, but they're for reporting to the IRS. And your totals are for your information.
If I post a few invoices for 2025 before closing my 2024 year end, will the system automatically know after I close 2024 that those few invoices belong to 2025? If not, is there
Yes.
a way to fix it?
Okay, so yes, invoices. So when we look at these fields, the this year, last year, next year, for both the 1099 and the totals tab, when you go, what it does is it looks at this date. So for the vendor totals, if it's 2025, if it's after 12/31/24, it's going to go in the next year bucket. The same with the 1099s. Anything after 12/31/24 is going to go in the next year bucket. When I close the year, it's going to move that into this year for both the year ending totals on the vendor and the 1099 year-end totals. Does that help? So since I'm in 2024, when I go in here, this is 2024. This is 2024. This next year bucket is 2025 and everything beyond. Same for your totals.
Okay, I'm scanning. Will Timber Scan work with the year-end version?
I don't know. That would be something we'd have to check into.
I will add that to the list. We were asked, can we update before the end of the day? I'm not sure if that means before the end of the year. What's the timing of, let me rephrase this and maybe we'll answer the question. What is the timing for updating Atrix and closing the 1099 year and closing the AP year?
Okay. Because you can print 1099s on the current year or last year, you just have to make a decision on when you want to close the year. I prefer processing 1099s on the current year, meaning 2024, because I find that's easier. You can close the year so it's 2025, and your option, let me bring this back up. When you go to, oops, let me go back to the screen. This screen, it's either 2024 or, I mean, if you close your year to 2025, it'll say reporting year 2025, and you hit the drop down and you have the option to pick 2024. So I personally like to close my year after I'm done processing my 1099s to kind of say, okay, it's done. But it's up to you. You can do it before and just do your reporting off of last year.
What happens if I have closed my year to 2025 and receive a invoice for 2024? Will it go to the 2024 year or the 2025?
Good question. Because 1099 amounts are based on payments, an invoice will not affect your 1099 totals. Now, if you go back and make a payment in 2024, after you've closed the year, as long as you haven't printed your 1099s before you print your 1099s, before you pay that invoice, it will be included in the 2024 totals. I hope that wasn't confusing.
We have multiple entities. Can we still choose to do e-file for all entities, even though some may have less than 10 forms?
You will have to e-file for them. And I'm not positive, but I believe Atrix has some batch pricing for customers that have a lot of entities where they have to print 1099s, but they're caught in that 10. You can always check with Atrix for pricing depending on the number of forms and companies. and taxpayer ID numbers.
If we e-file, if we e-file, we don't need to send out the 4-part to the vendor, right?
It depends on which option you picked. If you do the complete e-file package, that includes the mailing. Just let me get out there. Okay, if you do the complete 1099 e-filing service, they take care of the mailing to all your vendors. They take care of everything.
And regarding the 10, just I'm going to confirm here, when you're counting your numbers for those 10, you're counting, if you have 5 W-2s and 6 1099s, that counts as your 10 forms. So then you would have to e-file both your W-2s and your 1099s. So it's a combination of your tax forms. So the 1099 MISC, the 1099 NEC, the
Interest and the dividends, yes.
interest, dividends. There is a knowledge base article that I will be posting into the Q&A, a list of all the articles that was in the presentation. I will post that into this chat for you guys so that you have access to it. And there is an article out there that has that information in it. Also, the IRS website does have that information. Now we have another question that I can run over to you, Susan, and this is jumping to our Canadian clients. Our T5018 runs the same time with 1099s.
That all depends on what I understand about the Canadian T5018s. They're done at the end of a quarter, but that quarter is determined by how you file your taxes in the Canadian government. So they can be run as of December 31st, March 31st, June, is it June or July? March, April, May, June 30th or September 30th. It just depends on when your filing is with the Canadian government. I hope that answered that.
So we're kind of going back to the dates again. For accounts, well, I just want to confirm again because we had another question regarding invoices. Just remember, okay, it's not the invoice that triggers the 1099. It's the check paying the invoice or the EFT paying the invoice. It's when you pay the invoice that tells which year that amount goes to, correct?
Correct. That is correct.
All righty. I'm looking to see, can we still choose to e-file even if we have less than 10? Yes, you can e-file, but there is a minimum fee, which you can see up on the screen right now of the $27.99, correct?
I would assume that's what it is.
Yeah,
you'd have to check with Atrix for sure on what the minimum fee is. But I only had 7 here, and that's what it came up with.
And you would have to e-file if you had 7 1099s and 4 W-2s. So both would have to be e-filed.
That's what I understand. And you can double check that on the IRS website.
Perfect. So we have slowed down finally. Thank you, everybody. Those were some fast and furious questions. It looks like we've answered all of the questions unless somebody has a last minute one. I'll give it a minute here. And then I will post the list of the articles that showed on the screen, as well as links out to our year-end center, which has almost all of these, but I know some people like to have just a list from the presentation. And I also just posted how to get out to our year-end center and our community hub. Our community hub announcement page will tell everybody. We'll post a link out there when the recording's available. And I don't have any. Oh, wait. Yes, they will have. We were just asked, can we be sent the recorded one? Can you show the Atrix website screenshot?
Second. The Atrix screen, the one I have on my screen right now, or it should be coming back up if it's not up. Is that the one we're talking about? Or the login screen? So there's where you decide the filing. And the Atrix login screen is this with their website.
Trying to see. I'm trying to link this question. Give me just a moment.
Sure.
Atrix website to ask any further questions. We're being asked to provide the Atrix website to ask further questions. Maybe it was one of your screens at the end.
Well, at the secure e-file
right
login,
there.
Yeah, it's right here in blue.
So we have a question regarding the update. If my Sage version is an older one, will updating to 24.3 include Atrix, or is Atrix a separate component?
Well, when you go into either doing your payroll forms or your government e-filing in AP, there is an Atrix forms update. And that updates the first time you go in and anytime the forms for Atrix changes, including payroll forms. So even if you're not using payroll, you might run into an Atrix update. I believe all versions of our software, whether it's 24.3 or not, will prompt for the update, but you need to be on 24.3 for that update to go properly.
And then we had somebody ask if you could go back to page 29 to slide 29.
Which one is 29?
You're on 24, 23. You're going the wrong way. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, and 29. There you go.
This one, the recipient ID numbers?
Yeah, all they asked was if you could bring that up.
Sure. So you have the choice of how your taxpayer IDs show up on your 1099s.
And just so everybody knows, we are doing a webinar for the payroll questions next week. And I just posted that in answer to one of the questions. So you can go find that. And then we have a question. If I'm doing my Sage update, does it include Atrix, or is Atrix a separate component?
Atrix is a separate component when you go into your W-2 or 1099 processing.
Okay. Should we run the Atrix update to see if it works smoothly before we update?
Before you upgrade to 24.3? Is that the question?
Whoever wrote that, maybe we can add to it. I just upgraded to 24.3 and the Atrix is failing as .dll files are not found, waiting on a knowledge base resolution. You may want to call in and see if we have a resolution or if we're working on one. We may have to manually upgrade your Atrix. And then we have a question, can we go from 20.3 to 24.3? And there is a path of updating that you have to go through that I will post the knowledge base article for you so you can read it. I think that should we run the Atrix update? You would want to be on version 24.3 for a smoother upgrade of both Atrix and the software. It is best to be on 24.3 and then upgrade Atrix. Part of what was included in 24.3 was some modifications to the Atrix install. So I would recommend being on 24.3 and then do the Atrix upgrade for AP or payroll.
Yes.
All right. Is there a year-end update after 24.3?
No, there is not. 24.3 is the final version.
And the Atrix update is outside of the upgrade to 24.3, yes. All right, it looks like we are almost out of time and we've got all the questions answered. Remember, you have your year-end center. Why don't you bring up that page, Susan, for them?
All right. Oh, right here.
Perfect. And thanks, Susan. You did. Yay.
And I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your day for this class. I know you're all really busy. So thank you again.